Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Hey there, I'm a street musician, and I've got a tale that still makes my head spin. You see, I play guitar in a bustling city streets, where all sorts of people pass by. But there was this one day, well, it turned out to be quite the showdown with an entitled mother. I was strumming my guitar, a beautiful acoustic that's been my companion for years, sitting beside my trusty guitar case open for tips. The music was flowing and so were the smiles of the passers-by. Suddenly, this woman approached me with her kid, a boy around 8 years old. He seemed pretty ordinary at first, wearing sunglasses and a fancy handbag. The kid seemed fascinated by my music and I gave him a friendly nod. "Excuse me," she said in a tone that already felt a bit off. "My son loves your guitar. He wants to try it." I am generally a nice guy, so I replied, "Sure, he can strum a few chords under my watch." But as soon as I handed over the guitar, the kid started handling it pretty roughly. I quickly took it back, trying to be as gentle as possible. "Hey, it's an old guitar. Gotta treat it with care," I said with a smile. The mother's demeanor shifted drastically. "Why did you snatch it from him? He was just playing," she snapped. I tried to explain it's a delicate instrument and it's also my livelihood. I can't risk it getting damaged. She didn't seem to care. "You should let my son play it. He's a prodigy, you know?" I shook my head. "Sorry, but no. I need to continue my performance." And that's when things went south. The woman's face turned red with anger. "You're being selfish. My son deserves to play your guitar more than you." Before I knew it, she tried to grab my guitar from me. A tug-of-war ensued, and I was trying my best not to let go, afraid she'd damage it. People started to notice, and a small crowd formed around us. "Man, please, you need to stop," I pleaded. Out of nowhere, she attempted to kick over my guitar case, spilling the coins and bills onto the sidewalk. The kid just stood there looking confused and embarrassed. Just then, a couple of bystanders stepped in. "Is everything alright here?" one of them asked. "This man stole my son's guitar," the woman shouted, pointing at me. I was flabbergasted. "That's not true. This is my guitar. I'm a street performer." The crowd seemed skeptical of her claim. Then one of the bystanders, a kind-looking elderly gentleman, chimed in. "I've seen this young man here many times. That's his guitar." The woman was fuming. "You're all against me and my son," she yelled. The situation was getting out of hand and someone must have called the police because soon 2 police officers showed up. They started asking questions, trying to figure out what was going on. I explained the situation and the officers turned to the woman. She kept insisting the guitar was her son's, but her story was full of holes. One of the officers, a woman with no-nonsense look, asked, "Do you have any proof that this guitar belongs to your son?" Of course she didn't. It was then that the kid, probably overwhelmed by the situation, spoke up. "Mom, let's just go. It's not ours." The woman looked at her son, then back at the officer, her face a mix of anger and embarrassment. The officers warned her about her behavior, but as they were about to let her go, she made one last lunge for my guitar. That was the last straw. The officer immediately handcuffed her and she was taken away, still shouting and making a scene. The kid was taken aside by the other officer, looking really upset about everything. I was just relieved that my guitar was safe. I live in a consolidated county. That means that the city and county governments merged some years back, ostensibly to reduce administrative and infrastructure costs. This is important because services like fire, police, utilities, and trash pickup are now managed by former county officials and not the city officials. Many of these services are also much more inefficient, and some services have been outsourced to private companies. My municipality outsourced trash and yard waste pickup a few years ago, and the 2 companies who now do these collections are woefully inadequate. And their services cost more than when a city or county did it. They both have similar sets of rules. What can be put out for collection, take fewer types of waste away, and no longer come 2 days a week as the city once did, but now only come 1 day a week. We're all paying more money for less service. Now that the background is done, here is the story. I did some yard work over the course of a couple of weekends last summer, cutting some limbs, trimming some shrubbery, and cutting down a dead tree in my backyard. Knowing what the rules are for how much yard waste, limbs, leaves, and such can be put out, I bagged everything that was supposed to be bagged, filling up 3 of them. Things like leaves and small clippings, weeds and such. The paper bag for yard waste from the big box home improvement stores are what they require. So I use those. I just fill them halfway up so as to not make them too heavy for the waste collectors, even though there are no written weight restrictions. However, if a bag is too full, they will knock it over to spill out the contents, so they then don't have to pick it up. I cut the larger limbs down to under 4 feet in length, or they wouldn't be picked up. Anything at all they can do to get out of picking something up, they will do, and they almost always leave a horrendous mess behind them when they do pick things up. The pile put out for collection is not allowed to be any wider than 10 feet, nor any deeper or higher than 5 feet, nor may contain any pieces longer than 4 feet. All bags must be placed in a row, no more than 3 feet away from the limb pile. My pile was maybe 4 inches longer than the 10 feet, and only because of the tiny ends of the limbs, smaller than a toothpick, hanging out of the pile. The pile was no higher than 3 feet and no deeper than 4 feet. In other words, it fell within the size limits, except for a few twigs with leaves. I also had the 3 bags, each about half full of clippings and leaves, all lined up exactly as required, and about 2 feet away from the main pile. They were scheduled to come on a Tuesday, but when I got home from work that afternoon, it was all still there. There was a pre-printed notice on my door that my pickup exceeded the proscribed size limits, and the note said that I would be required to either pay a $250 oversized load fee or reduce the size of the pile by half to make it fit into the limit. And this is where the revenge comes in. I had the next 2 days off, so the next morning, bright and early, I got out the hedge trimmers. I trimmed the ends of the pile back to exactly 9 feet in length after carefully lined those trimmed bits on top of the pile, and I went to the backyard where the limbs I had not trimmed up the week before were stacked for the following week's pile, and found 4 long, fairly straight limbs. I removed all the smaller limbs and leaves from these limbs, ending up with 4 moderately straight poles, each about 7 feet long. I marked 1-foot intervals on each pole in fluorescent orange paint and stuck them in the ground. Out at the curb in the front yard, at the corners of a rectangle exactly 5 feet wide and 10 feet long, got our surveyor's tape, bright pink plastic tape used to mark property corners, and tied it onto and around the stakes at the height of 5 feet. This established the visual outline of the volume I was required to stay within. I made absolutely sure that everything in the pile was completely inside the poles and below 5 feet in height. This required adding almost 2/3 of the remaining pile in the backyard to the stack out front to bring it up to 4 feet 6 inches in width, 4 feet 6 inches in depth, and 9 feet 6 inches in length, and no pieces longer than 46 inches. The pile was almost twice as much material as before. This included some small logs up to 4 inches in diameter, also each 46 inches long. The limit is 5 inches diameter, all within the limits of 5 feet by 5 feet by 10, the waste company mandates. All within the limits of 5 by 5 by 10 feet the waste company mandates. I carried each of the 3 bags of clippings to the backyard and filled each of them as much as possible, while still being able to fold over the tops and staple shut each bag. I also included some 8 to 10 inches sections of the ends of larger limbs for added weight. The bags were now completely filled and weighed more than twice what they had before. I had to use a hand truck to get them out to the curb. They were so heavy. Oh, and all the extra clippings I had generated filled up 2 more bags, so the total was now 5 bags, the company limit. I then went inside, called the company, and very nicely asked that they come to pick up my yard waste, since they had not done so on Tuesday. They agreed to send out a truck and crew, and told me I would have to pay the fee. Come on then, I told them. They soon arrived and happened to be the same crew that normally comes to my neighborhood. I pulled a 25-foot Stanley tape measure from my pocket and asked them to measure the poles to confirm that the space was within the required limits. They did so and agreed the pile was not oversized, and proceeded to spend the next 2 hours manually loading it all onto their truck. Oh, and it took both of them to manhandle each of those bags into the back of the truck too. I told them very nicely and with a smile that I knew what 10 feet was, pointed to the fence where it was marked with orange electrical tape, and thanked him for coming to pick up my yard waste. The two tired, sweaty, waste disposable guys just groaned, got in their truck, and drove off. There was no extra fee added to my bill for that month. Never has been since. Now, I know they got paid for their time, and I know that I had to do a lot of extra work on my day off, but since last July I have not once ever had them leave so much as a single leaf on the ground in front of my house. They had to actually do some hard work with me standing there in shorts, smiling and drinking cold Gatorade while they were sweating. I, 18 female, am away at college and my sister, 16 female, is still at home with our parents. Moving out of my parents' house was totally the biggest relief of my life. They always favored my sister over me, and they also wanted me to dedicate a lot of time to her. She always wanted me to and is very needy when it comes to my time. My parents spoiled her that way. Some examples of this? She got better Christmas gifts than me. While I would maybe get some books and clothes instead of gaming stuff for art supplies on my list, she got a new TV or a new phone, new laptop, calico critters and trampolines when she was younger, and all kinds of scooters and stuff. She would get gifts to open on my birthday and would often get to blow out my candles, and my parties had to be catered for her, but hers were not catered to me, and I never got a gift at her birthday parties. She got to choose where we get takeout once a week, and I had no input. She got her room freshly decorated once a year, and however she wanted, but I only had mine done twice when I could remember, and I had no input. She got to have a TV and her laptop in her room, but I could not. She never had to include me when seeing her friends, but my parents would insist I had to include her with mine. They have a college fund for her, but they never had one for me. She could ask for money whenever and always got it. I was always told I should earn money when I asked. Even when I was a little kid, they know her favorite foods and they don't know mine. They used to call her favorite food as mine and would dismiss me when I corrected them. I did try talking to my parents before, and I had my grandparents help me a few times as well, and all it did was make my parents kick my grandparents out and refuse to let me see them. They scolded me every time I spoke up and told me I should love my sister. My sister was always so demanding of my time and my attention, and when I would tell her I didn't have the time or I had the plans, she'd say she should come first or she was more important than anything else. She also used to say she should be my first priority. For Christmas, I decided to stay at college and join some of my friends who weren't going home. I told my sister I wasn't coming home and she got so upset. She told me she'd miss me and I should come home to see her, but I made it clear I wasn't. Ever since Christmas, she has been on my case about not coming home. She called me on New Year's and told me I should have come home so she could see me because she deserves that. I got so frustrated with her and told her the world doesn't revolve around her, despite our parents making her feel like it does. She cried down the phone to me and said it was mean and that I talk like I don't miss her. I didn't tell her this, but I don't. It has been great not seeing her every day. She and my parents both blew up my phone after that, saying I was awful to talk to my sister that way. Was I in the wrong here? And now some comments on the post. Someone saying, "Not the jerk at all. I honestly wouldn't even say that your sister is either. Your parents are the ones who straight up conditioned her to believe that she should be everyone's priority and that she's entitled to everything. Your parents suck." Another commenter adds, "Not the jerk. Your sister has been enabled to be the entitled golden child. The way your parents treated you isn't okay. One of the hardest things in life can be accepting that you aren't ever going to get what you need, such as love, fairness, and respect from the people you should be able to trust most. The way your parents treated your grandparents for speaking up for you also shows who they really are. One of the most liberating is when you realize you can get those needs met elsewhere and be happy. Good on you for staying at college with your friends for Christmas. You can go as low contact with your birth family as you want. Therapy can help you work through things if need be. Good luck with everything." A third commenter goes with, "Not the jerk. I don't blame you at all for making that choice after the way your parents treated you. I hope your sister is still young enough to learn that you are correct, that the world doesn't revolve around her, and maybe she will learn and grow and do better in the future. Your parents are the main jerks here. They essentially puppeteered the resentment and hurt between you and your sister." For background, I have always been an incredibly hard and efficient worker. always getting things done faster than expected and doing above and beyond. My program for college required us to go to class for 6 months of the year and work full-time in our field for the remaining 6 months. As a freshman in college, I got my first job at an automotive supplier. My first semester was fairly slow, mainly due to the fact that the person who was supposed to train me went on medical leave my first week there and didn't come back for almost a year and wasn't replaced. However, in my second semester, things really took a turn for the worse. 2 key things happened at the start of the next semester. 1, I was moved to a new department, and 2, the company began merging with one of their competitors. Now, when the company began the merger, they decided they were going to move everything at my site to the other company's headquarters in another nearby city. The first thing that moved was a vast majority of the equipment my new department used. The upper management made the brilliant decision to leave the 4 members of my department at the old site until the move was complete. 1 supervisor, 1 tech, and 2 students. This meant we had essentially nothing we could work on. Here is where we get into the malicious compliance. After about 2 weeks of sitting around, my supervisor, 60 female, finally came up with a small task for me. I completed this in about 4 hours, which I thought was pretty good for something I had never done and had little training on. So I went to let her know. Hey super, I'm done. Super, angry and in panic, done? This was supposed to take you all week. I don't have anything else for you to do now. I need you to look busy in case boss walks by. Next time I give you something to do, you need to drag it out longer so that you look busy. Now, a young naive me was initially confused by getting reprimanded for working too fast. What the boss says goes. A week or so later, I was given another task. I was to take thousands of these tiny explosive devices we use and dispose of them by detonating them in a concrete box. They were too volatile to just throw out, so they had to be discharged first. She tells me, and remember to take your time and don't go through them too fast. Now this was obviously just busy work to get me out of the way, but the great thing with this task was it had to take place in a back garage that nobody ever went in to avoid the obvious danger of people walking in while I was setting off controlled explosives. I could have easily hooked up 20 of these bad boys at a time and set them off every 5 to 10 minutes, finishing the whole batch in about a week, but I had to look busy. So instead, I set off about 5 to 10 of these once an hour. I spent the rest of my time on my phone playing games, watching Netflix, listening to music, and so on, while getting paid over double minimum wage at the time. I managed to stretch that project for the remaining 2.5 months I was there, finishing just in time for the end of the semester. Anytime someone asked me for help on something else, I politely told them I would when I was done, but it might be a while because Super told me to not go through these too fast. They usually ended up finding some other bored students to help them. I think my Super genuinely forgot I worked there by the end, because when I stopped into her office last week to let her know that I had finished the task, she seemed very surprised and confused to see me. The company ended up paying me over $10,000, a lot of money for a student at that time, just to sit on my phone all day for 3 months. I sent an email to my supervisor, boss, and HR at the end of the semester, letting them know that I would not be returning the next semester. In my best corporate language, I let them know that I was leaving to pursue opportunities that would better utilize my time and skills. I found out later when several of us ran into each other at a job fair that all but 2 of the other students had also quit at the end of the semester out of boredom and/or uncertainty that we would even have jobs to come back to. The company did not handle the transition well and could never give us straight answers about where/when/if we will be brought back.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.